How we, yeah. Come back up right there.
Commission reports, anyone have anything to report? Okay. There are no public hearings, new business. We move to unfinished business, which is the climate grant update. Todd, do you want to take over from here?
Thank you, Chair Birch. So the work that we've been doing the last few months on the climate grant, it's a climate planning grant, and we're trying to use this. What we've used it for so far is to identify what the UW model identifies as potential changes in the climate that may occur over the next 20-year planning period. And we've refined that a little bit. We've taken out of there what's identified as the most impactful in that model, and then also what is the most significant, it seems, to a Toledo population. So we've really kind of boiled down a bunch of possibilities that are in the model to just a few, and then we've looked at those few, and we've talked a little bit about what those mean to Toledo, and we've analyzed. In our last meeting, we got a report from Gray and Osborne about some recommendations about infrastructure planning and other things. We've also talked about floods and wildfires and smoke and changes in heat, hotter summer days and drier days, and how that might affect streams and rivers around the community, both in the dry season where streams and rivers may dry up and prevent fish habitat, or in the wet season when they may flood and create other environmental hazards. So what this is it's a I think the first piece is ELS and I went through the existing critical areas codes to see if any changes were needed. And because we've been working through this about the same time we were working through the comp plan and the critical areas codes, you know, most of those, all of those seem to address the concerns that are raised by climate planning. So we don't believe we need any changes to the critical areas ordinances that council just adopted. This work, this meeting concludes the work that we're funded for under our current grant, but we have an ongoing grant opportunity to get more grant funding next year to continue analyzing this. And if they run out of funds next year, it might be picked up the year after. So the conclusions that we come up with here in this meeting will help to guide the next steps of the grant and the next steps of the studies and the next steps of the works that we do under that climate planning and that climate action grant. The funding is still uncertain. They don't have a lot of funding for next year, so it's kind of on a first come first served basis. We have decided that we are going to apply for additional funding. And you know, based on the work that we've done, we found those areas specifically in utilities and infrastructure, I think that we need more information on and more work on. But out of tonight's meeting, the first item is, you know, the summary of what we found about the critical areas ordinances, and that's in this document here. And basically you can see how we itemized the items that we're looking for climate impacts, and then within the critical areas ordinances that we council just adopted, you can see how each one of those is listed under the climate vulnerability that we've selected from the list of vulnerabilities that are identified in the UW model. So
can I interject for just one?
Absolutely.
You know, Joe, you bring up those points that you made in your comments yesterday and today, and I don't know if you have the piece of document from the city of Toledo where it designates the planning commission as the climate advisory team, and the use of regular planning commission meetings and special workshops for public notice discussions of climate impacts and resiliency policies and related code updates. So I think if you're interested in those areas, that it is going to be a planning commission function. So I would encourage you to put in your application and sit on the planning commission if you want to have a hands-on dealing with those items. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So if anybody had any questions about the findings of ELS as they reviewed the environmental codes with the lens of the climate impacts that we identified in the earlier steps of this piece of the grant. We can talk more about those if anybody has any specific questions, but basically the summary of this document is the codes that we've adopted address the climate impacts sufficiently and probably don't need to be modified. They all, in one way or another, address those elements of it, among other things. So if anybody had any questions about that summary, I'd be happy to answer them.
Up to this point, we're okay.
Up to this point, we're okay.
Yeah, all right.
So the next piece that's in your packet, I'm gonna save the easier one for last. These are all pretty easy. This document here is what we just adopted in our comprehensive plan.
Right.
The council just adopted this, so any recommendations for changes to this would come in next year's comprehensive plan update, which the council may or may not elect to do, but generally, cities can and do make minor changes to their comp plans and zoning regs throughout the year. They're allowed to do their comp plan once a year. Their zoning regs, they can change it anytime. So this is your current comp plan, and I wanted that included in there, and the thing that I did not include in there was what you saw in the last meeting from Gray and Osborne, where they were talking about there's a lot we don't know from a stormwater and utility standpoint for what types of utilities you have aging infrastructure. We don't have a real good catalog of those things. We don't understand exactly what the impacts of I&I. That's where water infiltrates into the sewer water system and ends up basically adding treatment of rainwater as it gets into the sewer lines, either through infiltration through cracks or breaks in the pipes, or it's somehow plumbed in there by accident. Somebody might have plumbed a storm drain into the sewer line or some other such thing. We just don't know a lot about those things. But we can measure those and determine areas of focus by where the volumes come as they enter our sewage treatment plant. And it'll do a couple of things. It may gain us additional capacity in the sewage treatment plant if we can decrease the amount of rainwater that we're treating that doesn't need to be treated. But it also can help to mitigate for some of the local situations where you could take that water and put it back in the ground in the spot where it's coming from and keep other rivers and streams flowing longer through the wind. So, Gray and Osborne, they looked at that, they focused on that. They also looked at, some of the emergency preparedness about, what do we have for our transportation infrastructure? Is it adequate? Do we have roadside ditches that need a regular maintenance schedule? Do we need an emergency plan? Do we need a plan in place to increase some of the ditches along roadways to make them function better in flood conditions, to stay drier longer so that people can still use those roads? Or do we need some other stormwater management policies in place? So it seems to me, because we've already kind of looked at the environmental pieces and it looks like the codes that we have are already adequate. And then in looking at what we have for the comp plan policies, those look like they're fairly general, because we all approved this piece before we dug too deep into this piece. These generally capture the elements of that, but not specifically. So maybe for next year and for discussion, I think I might recommend that you all have as part of your work plan next year to come back and re-examine these policies in the light of what's found for maybe an immediate recommendation might be that the it looks like a long document. The climate change, so maybe we need some more here. And I think that some of the testimony that was submitted on the comprehensive plan gave even another depth to this for emergency preparedness. And that,
Are you talking about the strategies part?
this piece right here, this is our climate and environmental resiliency section of our current comp plan.
Yeah.
So what we're learning through this process is that, yeah, this is probably okay because it generally hits on those things, but it doesn't specifically address the elements that we're singling out.
Okay, so you mean in general, we may want to upgrade it?
Yeah, I think this section is probably what we would focus on as a task item for next year under that grant. And I think one of the things that we could do is look at some of the Gray and Osborne work kind of related to goal 3, protecting critical aquifer recharge areas. Also, protecting air and water quality, and strengthen climate resilience and adaptation. But then, as I said, there was also a comment that was submitted into the council's packet on Monday for climate resiliency and emergency preparedness, which is another element of this that we haven't really touched on that much, and that would be, developing a plan on the city's part. Do we have a solid action plan for what happens when the city begins to flood? Do we have a book that we can pull off the shelf? Does everybody know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, to develop, an emergency preparedness and an action plan that goes along with that? How coordinated are we when what's predicted to happen will happen eventually? Although, this flooding, we've all been pretty lucky. So far we've been staying above ground and above water. So it's
kind of interesting you bring that up, though. I worked for a city and actually took part in planning some of the emergency response for things like this, and it was heavily reliant upon first responders as the guiding light for most of those activities. And in this particular case, we have no first responders because we have an outside fire district, we have no police force. So who would we assign as a director for emergency response at this time without those facilities available to us?
So great questions. The mayor. I'm not joking. Well, that could be, or it could be the fire chief, or it could be anybody else that is somebody from the community with a special skill in that area. Or
I'm just thinking that we would have to do an outreach to the fire district probably and get them on board as a partner in this to help with some of those activities that require first responder activities.
We also have a contract with Lewis County Emergency Management, so they would step in, and there is a book that was given to us last year. They're currently updating stuff, but they have, so many cots, they have so many generators, they have so many lights, they have a team of search and rescue of dogs, they have a team of search and rescue that go out on boats. I think it was last month, maybe John and I went to a meeting. So we have a special person that works with Lewis County. And we were the only small city that showed up, but they went over every team through emergency management, and they're redoing their book of emergency management, and we should get those soon. I believe in the police department, there is a Toledo emergency management. I'm sure it's very old that needs to be redone, but I believe we would, I know our evacuation is the high school. So I do know that. And then I believe we reach out to our liaison at Lewis County, and they would let us know where to go. So there is something. It's not like we're just like, I don't know. There is
most
something
cities
currently
have
there.
something.
Yeah.
And counties develop that on a county-wide scale too. But the idea being is that that is an element of this. The things that Mike and his team are looking at are specific to those elements that relate to infrastructure, because that's what they do. The city,
and that the county's not going to help us with, like that. We're pretty much on our own when it comes to infrastructure. There, I mean, it's up to us to
they're
protect.
not interested in how much water you're treating in your sewer system. They don't.
Not at all. Yeah,
that's not a thing. They don't care how much city roads flood during a flood event.
Correct.
But we could. But part of that is that coordination with the county. Through their update of the plan, you could say, well, we've designated these corridors as critical escape routes during fire, flood, smoke events, those types.
And those were a lot of things they asked. They asked us if, which cities have, plans like that. I think a lot of them, need to be updated. A lot of cities need to be
Oh.
updated.
Your infrastructure and roads haven't changed in a very long
Right.
time, so whatever you have, it may or may not be adequate, but that's another piece of, I think. But that's the discussion I'm trying to put forth to planning commission of the elements that we've discussed and of all the information that's been submitted. We're about to submit another application for the next phase of grant. We're not sure if we're gonna get funding for that or not. This work will only go on if it's grant funded. It's not something that the city council has budgeted for in the coming year, so. But out of this meeting, I think if we can get planning commission's recommendation as to these things seem like good things to put forth. And some of the elements that I would think about would be, infrastructure specific to the findings in the Gray and Osborne memo. Some of the emergency preparedness and management and investigation and coordination with Lewis County on those.
And the state, because most of our escape routes are state
Other
roads.
state highways, yeah. So these are the things that I've found and would recommend that we kind of put forward out of this meeting as planning commission's recommendation, but I wasn't sure. I wanted you all, because there's a lot here that I don't live here, so I don't see what's most important, which is why we're doing this with you all as the advisory board, so. If there's other pieces of this that are important, then that would be what we should discuss, and we should include that in tonight's meeting minutes, and then we'll structure the grant application accordingly.
So it'd be interesting to understand, because there seems like such a broad category to a degree. It would be interesting to understand how would we prioritize all the things that we'd want to. I mean, I love the idea of working with the county and them having all that. It would be good for us to have a plan of how to take advantage of that when it's available. And I don't know if that involves identifying all the vulnerable population areas in a flood event and a fire event, and then sort of understanding what would be the plan of action to make everybody safe and open up the corridors and all that type of planning that would need to go on. Do we need to allow for somebody to help us put that together? How do we, so the grant could be used for something like that?
Just like what we did with the first piece of the grant.
Yeah.
We took a big possibility and we narrowed it down to a fewer possibilities.
Right.
So now our next phase is to, within those, try to identify some general target areas. And then we don't have to we could come up with a solution, but we may not. We may come up with just a list of, well, here's why we don't have that, or well, we can't have that.
Okay.
So it's just more research and more analysis of those things. It may actually result in, oh, that's an easy one. We just do this, or that book it turned out it was okay, so that item gets checked off the list. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to identify areas for further refinement and focus. And the three that I thought, the third one is, it deals with both smoke and hot days, but looking at the potential for establishing, cooling and smoke smoke safety zones, basically an indoor space where people can go if they're getting too hot. Someplace that has a good HVAC system, and whether that be a school or a fire hall or something else, it may or may not exist.
Mm-hmm.
But in identifying those elements and in identifying things that, okay, well, these are important and we don't have anything to mitigate for this, that also helps the city to go out and look at other grant funding opportunities, or the fire district to look at grant funding opportunities for either system upgrades or new buildings or new facilities. So that's the other piece of this. If we can identify clearly through a series of analysis that these are things that this community needs in order to be prepared to adapt to all of these climate impacts that are going to come to us. So whether, that be, volcanic ash, or whether that be smoke or extreme heat, what do we have now? Where do people go? Do we all go and hang out in the school and in there? And is that HVAC system adequate of actually filtering air so that people can breathe and don't smother inside the school district building?
That's a good question. Yeah.
But we don't know those things.
Right.
So I think that for me, it was looking at, do we have spaces for shelter for the heat and the smoke and the volcanic hazards that we have, the ash and other things that may come out of it. I mean, obviously, if it's too significant, then we won't be standing around to talk about it. But the city has a layer of that if you have severe enough events, then state and federal and county resources kick in. But in the event that those impacts are minor, do we have something that we can do locally to help some of our disadvantaged community members or disadvantaged populations or people that are displaced because of these things?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do we have here that we can bridge gaps, and how do we intertie with the plans on a bigger scale? So those. To me, that's the next step of action, to look at places for shelter in those events, to look at infrastructure, roads and specifically utilities. Water supplies as they grow, so water and sewer utilities, to look at places where infrastructure is needed, and then. You know, based on the information that was submitted into the council meeting, I think we should look at coordination of some of the emergency management plans that are in place and whether those need updating.
I would think that would be a priority, at least here in the winter with the rain that we've been having. And you know, we can't expect that we won't have more. And it's something as simple as an evacuation route for the people living near the school, because that's where the water comes from downstream Scallops, and it backs up and it floods the fields back there, and then it comes up. It's gotten as far as the grade school and even further into the community. So the people that live in the lowest part of town, now they probably already know, but I don't know that we can just assume that. You know, just about everybody that lives in town knows that, oh boy, if the water starts coming from Wallace's fields, we got to get to high ground. I mean, that's pretty common sense stuff. But just the same, it might not be a bad idea to identify a route. Okay, go up 5th Street up the hill and get on and make your way up to the high school. But that could be included in on the city's website once it gets back up, just something there, or maybe a poster or a flyer on the city hall bulletin board outside. But I think that would be a priority, is addressing get to high ground, but how, and then coordinating who is the one who puts in the phone call to Lewis County Emergency Management. Is that Rachel or is that Sherry?
And how do we notify the people in town, right?
Right, yeah.
Same
So there's the Lewis County emergency, there's a,
red alert.
yeah, that would go out,
Okay.
so.
To everybody's cell phones, right?
I don't know if it's everybody or if you're subscribed, I'm not sure, I'd have to look in.
Okay.
You do have to subscribe, right? Yeah,
But there's no cost.
no, it's just, yeah, no, it's just this,
But even getting those pieces of information out to the
Out,
public is
people-
part of that,
yeah.
could be part of the campaign.
And that could be part of a campaign that's held at the big meeting every year too.
Yeah.
You know, when you have the biggest amount of people from the town in here. You know, small talk from the planning commission or to the folks.
Yeah. Sorry, I just realized what was happening. Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, that could be a good idea. And also, I don't know if the grants could be used for something like producing materials that we could have signage and maybe mailers going out or things like that. That people can be aware, or publishing a website where people can register if they're safe, or I don't know, like, I don't know where it goes to, but at a certain point, we're a small enough town to be able to quickly communicate with everybody. So if we are able to publish something from City Hall, even if it's just a webpage of this is now, you know, an alert or something, and people would know where to go just by looking it up or something like that.
So this is a climate action and strategy type grant.
Yeah.
So all of those things, the public outreach components of that, as you're talking about and developing that, or as you're talking about and evaluating those things in your public meetings, all of those things could be noticed as part of that. And then the product of that could be taken,
Yeah.
you know, the product of that may be a summary of, don't forget to sign up for this. And here's some public information that we've found out during this grant cycle. That's very much in line with this. So that public outreach component also important.
Right, just letting people know that there are places to go, not only to get to high ground if the waters are coming, but there are times that there's a lot of smoke, you know, I think this past summer, maybe not so much, but there are times when someone who's suffering from, any kind of respiratory, condition, it'd be helpful to identify, uh, sites where they could go for some relief from that, especially if it's, really threatening their health. Not just uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable for everybody, but there are people who, are vulnerable. And the same then with, the super hot days when we get up in the hundreds. A lot of folks that don't have air conditioning because it's Western Washington and who needs it? But, for maybe 5 to 10 days a year, it would be a good thing to have. And again, really vulnerable people, could, suffer
Mhm.
from those hot days if they don't have air conditioning. So
Like, I can
identifying places where they can go get cool.
And I can see a lot of the issues that we come up against infrastructure wise, we could use these as additional bullets in a grant application that normally would not have these parameters in it, so that not only are you looking for a new sidewalk from the school down to the turn, but it's also an evacuation route. It adds importance to the fact that we need one, or using similar for water treatment or for other issues, in our day-to-day normal grant application process.
Mhm. I'm a big fan of the green infrastructure mitigation. The idea that we can somehow minimize the effects of the flood by just small interventions in the watershed and the way it's draining, for the stormwater management. I think that could be a very important component, minimize all the pressure on having to get all these plans to have such a broad effect. Maybe you could minimize the actual effect of the flood a little.
Well, and again, it's the Cowlitz River. I mean, we don't really have a threat of flooding, maybe slide, maybe, here and there. But the real risk of flooding is the Cowlitz River. And, assuming that we're not talking about the dam breaking, because then it's an apocalypse. But, we don't have to worry about it getting people.
Where's the apocalypse grant?
Yeah, but that really is where we should be looking, the Cowlitz River. And I don't know what we could do about the Cowlitz River, further downstream, but that's outside of Toledo city limits. Probably across the street from where you are, across the river from you are, is where the water has in the past, come into town,
Right,
kind of through the back door, you might
in
say.
the back door.
Yeah, and what would a city be able to do about that when it's not even city property?
Well, the things that you could do in those cases, I mean, the dam has an action plan and they know basically what the flood levels are gonna be as they release different volumes of water downstream, right? So as they release those volumes, what are the planned flood levels for the different points within the city of Toledo? And then you could look at, okay, well, with that, they need some area for volume, so a smart engineering type, not necessarily a planner that is here tonight, but a smart engineering type could figure out, okay, well, here's a way that we could contain that with less damage to meaningful impact or have meaningful impact on properties, either by creation of, maybe some higher ground and lower basins to achieve the same volume of storage as they release the water, but also protect some of the more critical elements of the city. So there's not much you can do to control the river. That's already set by other people's policies. But how the city is designed to interact with the way that the river is going to be controlled. That's something that you could study under the next steps of this and investigate. Is there something we can do? Because you can't put up walls and then take away all the flood storage that they're anticipating, right? Because that's why they're releasing water. They need to get rid of it. They're not doing it to flood a community. They're doing it because they can't hold it anymore. So within that plan, there's things that we can look at and say, okay, well, maybe if we could create a little volume here and then over here, maybe we.
Yeah, some diversion as it's building up, can you minimize the effect that'll eventually build up? And that could maybe let us not worry about 50 households or something like that. I think these minimal sort of increments make it easier to manage the overall effect, or minimize the damage, I guess. If it's filling up from the back end, if you're able to divert that water into some fields or something that we can designate, like Todd's saying, make lower so it catches more water, that means less water in town.
The problem is it means more water downstream.
It's the same water.
Same water, yeah.
Yeah,
It's just in a different spot than it would have been before.
which affects then, Kelsall and Castle Rock and the rest of it, because you're essentially gonna raise the level of the river if you keep the water in the river by building higher elevation things to prevent the water from flooding. Then
Oh, I was thinking like divert it to a lower place, so you can pool some of it, and it
because
doesn't
we
go
don't
up.
have any place in town that we could actually do that.
You have the same volume of water, you just have less area that it takes up.
Correct.
So it's like spilling a gallon of milk across the table, you have that volume that you're conveying, but if you can shallow out the middle of the table and firm up the sides of the table to create the same volume of conveyance, then that is the same to everybody downstream. It's the same water at the same rate.
And can a grant actually be made for, or an application for a grant where we buy a specific area of land for this very purpose? Is that actually within the scope of this type of
It
stuff?
wouldn't be in the scope of this grant work,
Right,
but it could be something that's identified as a need to either further investigate or an action plan to, yes, we need to go out and do this. We need to find somebody who's willing to let their property flood during this event and channel the water that way. I don't know if you're taking public comment, but I did see a member of the public with their hand up.
Yeah, we're a small enough group, we'll take it, sure.
If you go to onevoicelc.com, they explain their process and why they're doing it for the Chehalis River to do exactly that thing.
Mm.
Contain that water and channel it out metered so they don't destroy everything.
Well, isn't that what the dam is doing right now?
That's
The Mayfield Dam?
well, that's a different story because there's two dams there.
Joe, what was the name of it? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Onevoicelc.com.
Thank you.
They explain all of it.
They, what I thought was kind of incredible was after the 1996 flood. I went back because they did get sued and they won their lawsuit. In fact, nothing happened to them, even though there was $20 million worth of damage. And the report that came after that for the renewal of their license was about this thick. And I went through it, and what they did is they established minimums and maximums for levels within Mayfield Lake. And it was brought home the other day when they were letting go 28,000 cubic feet per second, and then for 3 days dropped it down to like 14. And then after 3 days brought it right back up to 28. And it has to deal with the fact that the flows were not coming in as fast as the water was being released. And so they went down and they approached their minimum levels for a few days, and they had to wait until the water got high enough for them to go back to releasing as much water, which made absolutely no sense to me. But yeah, that's that zone that they're required to stay in. That I haven't figured out why they can't circumvent that during a flood period like we're having now. And a lot of it has to do with the homes along the lake and the docks and recreational uses that are mandated by the federal program that was dictated to them after that last flood. The 2007 flood was entirely different, at least for my neighborhood. And but they went up to 68,000 cubic feet per second during the 96 flood.
Yeah. So
Because somebody said, well, let's open the gates, and they said, oh, too far, and we might as well open them all the way. And it wasn't quite like a dam breaking, but it was about half that.
2017, they lowered that reservoir 30 feet.
Riff or Mayfield,
Right.
right? Yeah, and they found out,
Because of the spillway
right?
and the weak points in the spillways.
And they trucked forever out of there, and they didn't repair it, did they?
No, that's the concern.
Yeah.
if you go to the commissioners and ask them for a GIS simulation of a dam break, they have no idea.
Yeah, that's,
As I understand it right now, Tacoma Power is the lead on that. They're supposed to have that by mid-March or April.
okay. Would be nice to see them follow through.
Nice to see the simulation.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I want to see that.
If I understand, these pothole lakes out here are designed to wash out. So, without this, it's like right there.
So what are the outcomes that we want to have out of this discussion? Do we want to lead with here?
Well, I was just trying to jot some notes from the discussions that we're having. What we'd like to do is to tee up some specific areas of focus for the next phase of work to be done under this grant. We've concluded the steps with this summary of here's what we found. And the next step is, this is where we want to dive deeper. And this is where we need more information. So the items that are evolving through this discussion now are, it's the water infrastructure and supply issues with the increasing droughts. It's the sewer I&I impacts, or the sewer impacts from rainwater and flooding water, flood events, identifying evacuation routes and safe routes of travel, and then some investigation about heat smoke as shelter locations. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I have so far.
That makes sense.
I'm trying to get those not only from my recommendations, but also this discussion here too. So those are the areas. I guess the other piece that would be the coordination of emergency management activities with county and state, and identifying what we have in an inventory. And
That's really important.
And would we want to have like a Toledo plan for all these events,
and Rachel says,
right?
you do have a Toledo plan, but we're just not sure if it's coordinated. The county has updated theirs once, probably since yours has been updated. Now they're in the process of updating it again. So,
Okay, I understand that the county emergency management was supposed to have a plan to the commissioners Monday, the 15th.
oh,
I don't know if that happened, but either way, they won't see it till mid-January.
yeah, they're done. I think they're done meeting for the year now. I just watched their first meeting in December, but I didn't watch their second one yet. They didn't discuss an emergency management plan in their first meeting in December, but I didn't look at their second meeting agenda.
Yes, sir.
The city does also have an issue with the water, with our water main due to erosion from water, so that has exposed it, so that might.
This is the one in the water storage area.
But it's been eroded away to expose the pipe. The city can't afford that, so maybe. a
Didn't-
grant could help.
Didn't our congressperson come out and visit that? Nothing came of it. Has anybody worked up a cost on that? Just for across the,
3 years ago, it was 1.25 to 1.5.
It's like 1.8.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 1.8.
million?
Probably much more than that.
Does that just take it from there to the storage tank,
That's the plan to replace it.
to the tank?
But I think Dan Anderson said he had some ideas on other things to do that didn't involve replacing it, which is good, because it's really expensive. So I'm hoping he's gonna be bringing that.
Okay, now, take this with a grain of salt because it's not California, but in California, many of the subdivisions that I worked on had infrastructure improvements that were off-site as a condition of approval. Now we're making Cowlitz Meadows do a $9 million sewer water upgrade like that. Is there any possibility that, let's say, the Jolma property or somebody else could maybe be responsible for that? So we're not looking for a grant for the next 5 years or 10 years, and you know, I mean, it's obviously it's water critical and it serves their subdivision, so ultimately it does serve them. but it's an important component of our infrastructure, and that could be made part of a condition of approval during your negotiations with them.
Well, not anymore, that one has a valid
No,
subdivision.
Jolma property.
Oh, the Jolma property. Yeah, so we can make them comply with ordinances that are in place at the time they get a complete application. And if we have another plan that identifies these things, then that gives us some leverage to condition them among other things. So maybe what we develop out of this, I mean, right now, if they meet our regulations, they get approved. As long as they don't propose a conditional use or something else, if it's just a straight up subdivision application, then the standards are simple. There, if you meet code, you get approved. To not do that is to be in significant jeopardy of facing legal challenge from the applicants and probably losing, because those are the criteria for that type of land use action. Where you get into it, where we got into it with Cowlitz Meadows, is they asked for a mixed use project, which turned into a planned development. And then that became a discretionary approval, and then we were able to look at things outside of the normal realm, how they would fit in the community and impact.
But I understand, at one point in time when Joel was owned by somebody else, they wanted to do exactly the same thing that Callis is doing. They wanted a separate, commercial site set aside so they can do something there. They wanted multifamily homes along one edge, they wanted executive homes on the ridge. So
Yeah.
it lends itself to a negotiations.
That sounds like something that would be a blend of densities and uses that would require, again, a planned development approach.
Right.
Kind of similar to what we did with.
And I think the planning commission built that into our methodology when we were doing those. So that particularly in the case of commercial, we had that opportunity.
Yeah, yes, you did. Yeah. Okay, so I now have, and we'll have to refine, I mean, like everything else, grants have a limited budget, even if we can get the remaining funds that were, oh, we might have to take it in smaller chunks or something, but so the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, now 7 items. Heat, smoke, ash shelter locations, water infrastructure supply issues with increased droughts. Water erosion on city mains would be a part of that, water infrastructure. Flood mitigation strategies. Sewer, I&I or high water impacts and flooding events and how those impact our sewer system. So maybe that could be combined. So water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure could probably just be combined into an infrastructure category. And then coordination of emergency management plans would be another. So it looks like we've got 4 or 5 focus areas once I maybe finesse these a little bit. But if those sound okay to you, then I will summarize these and I'll put these in sort of a staff report and summary for our next meeting so that you can look at them. But by then the grant period opens early January. So we'll probably have, I'll use these as guidance when we're preparing the grant application. And then we can come back in January and confirm. I'll summarize what I think I heard you say, and then you can say, yep, that sounds good. Or no, it needs to be corrected and we'll fix it. I don't know what else we have on the agenda for January, so.
No, I think one thing we need to do is we have to have a motion to excuse Jake from the meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye. Vote. With that, then let's go into public comments. Anyone have anything they wish to say? Joe?
Yes. Or as I decided to join the planning commission, we'll submit this. Or
I'm not being served, am I?
no. Not you, so I'm Joe. Basic. So I would request you look over that. And if you agree with it, I'll be in. If not, I'm not.
Well, so commission seats are council appointed.
Yes, they are.
So although you all could make a recommendation on new members, you don't make a decision. I just want to make that clear to everybody that planning commission doesn't make the decision on who gets to be a new member. That's a council decision, and those are made by usually appointment of the mayor.
Yeah, I feel like we're being
Council makes
blackmailed
it.
here, Joe.
Well, I've had the discussion Renee and I had this discussion, the mayor and they have had this discussion years ago.
Uh-huh.
I think it's certainly something we can discuss, right? And see if the commission wants to consider the recommendation to council. We would,
Well, I'm gonna read it out loud, so it's part of the record then.
yeah,
Mission statement, Toledo will be Washington's premier livable city by utilizing a two-core approach. Old Town to preserve history and culture, and a hilltop modernized future expansion reflecting Toledo's humble beginnings. The city of Toledo shall pursue a two-core development strategy that preserves the historic riverfront character of Old Town while directing new civic, residential, and commercial growth toward higher ground along the Plamondon Road corridor. Old Town preservation, Old Town should be designated as a historic and cultural district focused on historic preservation, river-oriented recreation, small-scale infill development, tourism, arts, and small businesses. Large-scale or infrastructure-intensive development shall be discouraged in Old Town to protect historic resources and reduce flood risks. Plamondon Road corridor shall serve as Toledo's primary growth area for civic and public facilities, healthcare and essential services, workforce and senior housing, mixed use and employment development, economic development throughout the area, a new main street. Development shall emphasize walkability, smart city integration, and long-term infrastructure efficiency. The city shall prioritize safe, accessible connections between Old Town and the Plamondon Road corridor, including roadways, sidewalks, trails, wayfinding, and mobility options for all citizens, seniors, children, young adults, middle age, and people with disabilities. Public infrastructure investments shall prioritize higher ground development areas, phased cost-effective expansion, aligned with planned growth, flood resilient design in Old Town. Airport expansion along Jackson Highway will bring travel support business opportunities. Port development along SR 505 and 506 will bring light manufacturing and business centers for living wage jobs. Economic development strategies shall reinforce Old Town as a tourist destination and Plamondon Road as a service and employment center. Jackson Highway, State Routes 505 and 506 are dedicated to larger growth through port and airport development, ensuring growth benefits existing residents while protecting Toledo's character. I think there's a number of things in there that sound logical and reasonable. I think there's some others that you're going to have a great amount of difficulty, since our UGA and our vision for the city and the county's vision for the city is to grow along 505 towards exit 63 and not along Plamondon. And this is my last planning commission meeting, so I don't have an opinion on whether the rest of the planning commissioners feel like this is an either or for you. And so I'm not going to comment on it, but I encourage you to wade in if you feel.
Well, I think each of us as individuals are, you know, we would naturally have, call it if you want an agenda or a vision of each of us on our own would, but we as a group have to work together.
that's right.
We really do. We have to be able to discuss, work things out. If we come up to strong differences, we have to be able to work through those. And we can't just say, well, I'm leaving. Although maybe we can. Well, yeah, we can.
No, I think it brings up a good point. And Joe, so when I see something like that, and I understand you're very passionate about this, and there's a lot of alignment with the Heritage and Horizons thing that's also there. I think a lot of like Steve saying, there's a lot of good in there, but at the same time, there are things that may not be what everybody wants or what Toledo wants. So are you gonna be willing to compromise and try to get to yes on the things that everybody agrees with? That's a question for you to answer to yourself.
I have had this planned out since 2016.
Well, and one of the, sorry,
When I got here, we moved here to get away from the crazy traffic, whatever you wanna call it,
Mhm.
the congestion and they create the towns to do that specifically.
Yeah.
I don't want that here. I
Yeah.
want that, if you put all that new residential up between 505 and 506 west of Plumonton, so everybody going to work goes out to 505 and 506, you're not plugging up the streets.
Well, I think that's
Right
the
there.
vision the city has already, Joe.
Yeah, I
Well, it's
mean, these are the
not
things
reflected
we've,
in your comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan, when it's laid out properly with the master plan that you went by, that brings you federal dollars, state dollars, and local dollars to accomplish what you want. That's why I said when I asked for $250 million as a start, as you recall, you mocked me on that. That was a start. We need more than that. I have faith that we'll find it if we lay it out properly in the first place.
I don't know what to tell you.
I
You
know.
can, you can join the planning commission and help make it into something that you'd like it to be. But I think the idea that this is what I want, and if you're not willing to amend to that, then I'm out, is kind of self-serving, and I'm not really sure I appreciate that. But like I said, this is my last meeting, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the board here, although they don't make the final decision, the city council makes the final decision.
Right, I will say this, whatever your plan is, you never end up with that as the ultimate plan. That's the way it works.
Well, we're fully aware of that. I mean,
Planning is everything, the plan means nothing.
yes, in a lot of cases, you're right. That's true.
But we haven't planned accordingly.
Well, who's
Not
we?
only
Who is
the-
we, Joe?
we, the city. I've watched this for 10 years. The reason I haven't said anything till now is I said, I will not be the person that moves into an area and not without knowing anything. I would wait 10 years before I open my mouth.
This is the.
but does
10-year
that
mark.
mean, does that mean that if you wait 10
10
years, nobody else's idea is gonna be worth something because it was a month old or something?
Okay,
I'm not
let's,
saying-
let's say that we're at the 10-year mark now.
Mhm.
Okay, and now you've decided to open up what your plan
And
is.
I've been asking for the master plan for multiple years. Have I not?
Well, the growth management plan is our master plan.
It's not according to me, not the way I see other plan. I've been doing this for 35 years, Steve.
And I have not seen you on one board in this city. Have you been on the planning commission?
No, I just told you I wouldn't do that for 10 years.
Okay,
I've been I got the chamber started again because I thought we were gonna get businesses here. That's not happened. GTHH, you came and said it was a land grab. I've been talking everything, almost everything in there as a compromise to what I said in the beginning.
So I think, can I just say something? So the thing that I'm trying to understand is, I'm just gonna go back to what Tom said, because that's the essence of the whole thing. We're all giving up our time to
Yep.
try and do the best we can for the city, representing the various viewpoints that everybody's very passionate about. That means nobody's gonna get everything they want, 100%, I can tell you that. So that if that can't be, if that's the, literally the go, no go for you, it's problematic.
Well, if you're not gonna make a new core of the city, because this one's gonna get eliminated sooner or later. Whether it's by a flood, a dam break, or liquefaction from an earthquake, which you're in all of those zones,
Okay,
what are you gonna do?
well, we're discussing the things we can do with our plan, with the mitigation that we're discussing now. Incrementally, I don't think any one of us has put up here's a point A to point B, everything is solved plan. I don't think anybody can do that. So the question is, if you want to participate and incrementally bring those arguments to the table, which I think are sound.
Phased approach in there.
Right, but I mean, I see some slides, right? Don't those things need to be fleshed out in some way, every one of those and discussed?
Absolutely.
Right, so if that's something you're willing to do and you're willing to agree that some of them may just, people won't agree with you, that's okay?
We've been through this at the Vision Toledo thing. I'm also on the board of that.
I understand,
And
but
we go nowhere.
if we're gonna be, I'm just saying, if you want to join the planning commission and be a part of this, that's kind of what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to put in our part to bring our experience to the table and try to bring up ideas that we think will work for everybody. If you want to do it that way, I think there's room. But if the idea is we have to take that and everybody has to adopt that before you sit at the table, it makes it difficult.
There's nothing to adopt.
Okay.
It's just a mission statement and a vision, or what I'd like to see.
But
Oh,
you
that-
And you.
But you
if
just
wanna
said-
See that.
but you just dropped it on the table instead of you're willing to go along with
If
this.
you're willing to make this the most livable city in Washington. By that approach, we work towards that end.
I take offense at the fact that you think that I've spent the last 5 years here on my own dime, that I don't want what's best for the city, and I resent it when it's brought to anybody that's in the city council
How do you
or the
think
planning
I felt when
commission.
You and your spouse got up here and said, it's a land grab.
It is a land grab,
My turn.
yes.
Go.
I've only been here 15 years,
Mm-hmm,
but long enough to understand this is a walking city.
mm-hmm.
The entire population walks. If you want to figure out how to take this building and buy that land across the street and move City Hall up there, that frees up this to do whatever the city would like to approve to do. But you've got the senior centers right there. Your population is aging, and the idea that you're just gonna pick it all up and shove it all up under Plum, that's exactly what
Just
your
that
plan
phased
shows.
approach.
A phased approach, what is that gonna mean? Are you gonna guarantee that,
I don't
All the
guarantee
seniors-
anything.
well then, Joe, what are you doing?
By the time you get through this, we're not building this for us,
I am fully aware
building
of
it
that,
for your children and your grandchildren.
and it's also your
And
strength.
I've sat here for 10 years and saw nothing happen but 4 houses and 2 duplexes up by the park basically.
And so you've sat here for 10 years and
Absolutely.
decided
I
now
have not.
that you're gonna come in and tell all of these
I
people.
have not.
And we,
Citizens of ours in, that they're doing the wrong thing, and unless you do what they do, you do.
Okay, we're done.
Yeah, so-
Three comments are up. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
can I just say one last thing? I just want to say one last thing. So I want to make sure we encourage everyone who wants to be part of the planning commission to come and lend their voice to the commission. I understand you're passionate about this things. If you want to apply to be in the commission, I encourage you to do so. And I encourage to bring these ideas one by one to the table and we'll hammer them out. I can personally say that I will put my ear out and we will go through every one. And if we all agree it's good for the city, it will go through. And if we don't, it won't. So that's it.
And I'd like, Joe, for you to be sure to consider before you do put in an application to be on the planning commission, is being on the planning commission the best vehicle for you to achieve what you'd like to see? It may not be.
Right, it may not be.
As a planning commissioner, on the planning commission, you really may not have the latitude that you do as a private citizen. So, I mean, just consider that.
I have. And
Okay,
that's why you don't have my application. I'm still considering that. I'm just saying, this is what I would like to see. But they're willing to work towards that. Great. But if we're not, we're just gonna hang out here. And do nothing, basically, we've just. Made the main street First Street, and then I heard Eric. And Jamie both say, they didn't like that idea. You sat there, you listened to it.
well, people don't have to like what we do,
No?
and
And a lot of
or
them
they
don't.
can't like what we do.
I mean, look at what happened when we put a stoplight in town.
Oh, that was you?
You know,
Right, I get it.
it was 4 weeks of hell on Facebook, listening to people call you corrupt, crazy, stupid. No regard for the fact that the little old people who want to go from the bank to city hall to the post office are having to dodge cars and trucks as they cross. But it interfered with their 3 seconds of blowing through an intersection. And you're gonna get the same response from a lot of the population
I
here that,
understand that,
that's a no growth population.
but you have to have the conversations.
You do have to have the conversations. I don't dispute that. Like I said, I think there are a lot of decent ideas in your proposal. And I think we have started to address some of them in our growth management plan. Some of you may not agree with, and you're certainly welcome to bring that up at Planning Commission if you're part of the commission board. But I don't think anybody is going to say no to anybody's ideas. It'll be a matter of people hashing it out on this commission and having a vote on it. And you have to be willing to live with the vote. And if you're not happy with that, then don't apply. But if you are willing to live with that it's going to be 5 people deciding, then you're welcome to apply.
Yeah, and good ideas don't really have ownership. If it's a good idea, everybody recognizes it. And if, and nobody owns it.
And we're
So,
gonna bring
and we're all here for that same reason, right? We all want Toledo to be better and to succeed. So there's no,
We've established that.
okay,
Fine.
make sure
Yeah.
it's good.
It's What case, I live in South Toledo,
Yes.
just the part that's not gonna flood, I'm in the 500 year.
Oh, good.
Anyway, you mentioned 5 years. I would like to thank you for the work that has gone on the last 5+ years. Because without you here picking up what my intention was for the metered growth, thank you for having that in your document, the metered infill growth in South Toledo. And our ability to do our own permitting is making Toledo solvent. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And all of what you all have done the last 18 months is amazing. It made it very doable for council to get through what we get through it, because of the hundreds of hours you all put into it, or whatever that number is. It's pretty substantial. So I appreciate it, Steve.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for coming and helping,
Ernie.
and keep up the good work, everybody.
Well, and I want to echo what Eric just said too, Steve. I really appreciate your expertise and your experience as a builder and a developer has been so valuable. Working with Todd and bringing us into the conversation at the same time, it's really been beyond valuable.
Well, it's been an honor.
Here. I agree with that.
Anybody else? Then I will take a motion to adjourn.
You have it.
Second,
Second the motion.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Invited to stay a little bit if